2 pi x plus 4 pi. My hint was for you guys to factor out the greatest common factor. So y equals -3 cosine. What do they have in common, class? So if I take out a 2 pi times something equals 2 pi x. That means what goes here? X. And someone said plus 2. So if I write down my letters, class, what goes in front of the trig function? A, B, C, or D? A cosine. What goes here? X minus C. Now the D is the constant. So if you have like a plus 4, or they like to trick you and says like something like 4 minus 3, okay? That 4 or something out there would be the D value. So class, what's our A value? A is equal to -3. Class, what does the A value tell us? If you take the absolute value of it, that gives you the amplitude, which is what? 3. Class, what's our B value? Our B value is 2 pi. We need an equation for the period. On count of 3, class, we're going to say the equation for the period. Ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3. 2 pi over b. So I'm going to take that b value and put it here. That means my period is equal to 1. Raise your hand if you got 1. And then my c value, okay, this is tricky, right? X minus -2. The formula has to have a minus sign, so I changed the plus to a minus negative. So you just cover them up. And you'll notice that your C value is -2. Which direction do you think that's going to go? This is left 2. Remember my silly phrase, add to X, go west or left? Alright, now we need to get our 4 intervals. Now, to get your 4 intervals, you're going to figure out, well, if there's a parentheses to the right, that basically means there's something called a phase shift. A phase shift means that your trig function is going to be moving to the left or to the right. So what's the hint? You see what? Parentheses. Okay, so if we see parentheses, then we basically put all of the parentheses, someone just said it, between 0 and 2 pi. So I'm going to put 2 pi x plus 4 pi. You might be asking, which one should I do? Should I do the one that's not factored or the one that's factored? The answer is it does not matter. So now I'm going to solve for the letter x. Let's make that kind of bold. Class, am I going to divide by 2 pi or subtract 4 pi? Subtract. I have -4 pi less than or equal to 2 pi x less than or equal to -2 pi. I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi. So if my pi's cancel out, -4 divided by +2 gives me -2. These will cancel. We're left with x. And then over here, these will all cancel. That means this will be -1. Class, what's the distance between negative to -1? Period of 1. Do you see how this matches up? All right, let's graph it now. Now, think about that. That's going to be in quadrant 2. So let's just say, count by 4s. This is, graph paper in some ways is actually not helpful. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So now I need the midpoint between -2 and -1. Now if you get stuck on that, you can make these fractions. Put it over 1, multiply by 2, and you have something called -4 over 2 and -2 over 2. So -4, this could be this one right here, -3 over 2. That's the midpoint. How do you find the midpoint between those two? Well, I decided to actually double the values again. -8 over 4, -6 over 4, and -4 over 4. That way you can count in between. Class, what's between -8 and -6? -7 over 4. What's between -6 and -4? -5 and 4. Okay, looks a little bit crazy here. What you can do is you can circle. So essentially this is -2. This one is -7 over 4. This is -3 halves, -5 fourths, and this is just -1. So those are essentially, if I had to clean it up and I had to write only 5 numbers, the 5 points, mine would be here in the pink. Alright, so the 4 intervals basically means the spaces between them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we have our 4 intervals. Okay, now with the 5 points, to clarify, basically you're taking -2 and you're plugging and chugging into here and you get a value. The way I do is I kind of systematically do all 5 points together. So it doesn't matter if you choose to kind of do them individually, you should have a table of values. Okay? So to clean that up, I'll just have my values here, -2, -7 over 4, -3 halves, -5 fourths, and -1. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into these wonderful craziness here. So I'm going to put in -2 into my x values. Class, what's -2 times 2? -4 pi, and -4 pi plus 4 pi gives you 0. Let's kind of cheat here. Let's go to -1. -1 times 2 is -2 pi, and -2 pi plus 4 pi is 2 pi. And -3 halves times 2 is going to give me a -3 pi. -3 pi plus 4 pi is just going to give me pi. Class, what does this look like? They look like the quadrantal angles. So you could put -7/4 in there and that, and then you're basically going to just get pi over 2. And here you're going to get 3 pi over 2. Okay, so what do you do now? Well, we have to take our x values and now find cosine at those values. So cosine at these values. So class, what's cosine at 0? If you need to, you can always write down your quadrantal angles again. 1, 0, 0, 1, -1, 0, 0, -1. Cosine is the first one, so cosine at 0 is 1, 0, -1, 0, and 1. Now, you're at the very end, be very careful. Here it tells you to multiply by -3. So we're just going to multiply all these numbers by -3. So -3 times 1 gives me -3, 0, 3, 0, and -3. So now if I make my graph, here I'm going to have -3 at this value, 0, 3, 0, and then -3. What happened to the concavity of the graph? It flipped. How do we know that? Our amplitude, the a value is -3, so it flips it. Remember, your amplitude of 3 is just the distance from here. You notice that it was shifted. We said -2. So from this point there, it's shifted over. And the graph did not move up or down because we didn't have a d value. So lots of fractions. and then knowing our quadrantal angles.